In the year 1922, at the very zenith of cinematic splendor, two of the motion picture industry's most exalted luminaries, Mary Pickford and Lillian Gish, made their much-anticipated arrival upon the shores of London, greeted with all the ceremony and admiration befitting figures of such rare distinction. Miss Pickford, draped exquisitely in fox furs and a gown of dazzling brilliance, appeared every inch the sovereign of the silver screen, whilst Miss Gish, no less resplendent, bore herself with quiet grace. She was a dish, her diamond earrings catching the light beneath a coat of the most sumptuous refinement. Their destination was none other than the illustrious Piccadilly Oriental Pavilion Theatre, where the premiere of the much-discussed production Lament of the Opaline Duchess was to unfold in a spectacle of unparalleled grandeur. A carpet of the deepest crimson extended along the entrance, receiving the eminent and the affluent with due reverence, as though ushering them into a temple devoted entirely to art and indulgence. Within, the scene was one of almost otherworldly magnificence. Chandeliers of intricate design shimmered with golden radiance, champagne was decanted into glassware evocative of the 17th century, and an accomplished orchestra rendered the fashionable airs of the day with impeccable finesse.
Would one be correct in presuming that the Piccadilly Oriental Pavilion Theatre possessed a beauty of the most exceptional and refined order?
Well, it's a wonderful world to live in. I don't think we're any happier. I'm not any happier than I was in those days. Of course,
And I had never had a drink in my life, but I was the most intoxicated gal you ever saw. There was a very dear man that would appear with me sometimes, and he said, I want you to know that this girl has never had a drink in her life. Oh, they hooted. They couldn't believe it. I hadn't. It was true. I was only 17 and a half. We didn't have liquor in our house, so...
Amongst the distinguished company was the celebrated comedian Harold Lloyd, whose spirited entrance, punctuated by an impromptu tap dance of remarkable agility, elicited delighted applause from the assembled guests, affirming the evening as a gathering reserved solely for the most eminent strata of society. Amid such opulence, a most curious ornament, a stalk of modern design bearing an artificial infant, briefly faltered, yet, as it slipped, it was most elegantly retrieved by Miss Mary Pickford, whose poise rendered the incident a moment of refined amusement. Yet, beyond the theatre's opulent facade, an altogether less harmonious tableau was taking shape. Throughout that very week, a most curious and unprecedented strike had been undertaken by the librarians of London, an assemblage not ordinarily associated with unrest, who, in a gesture both symbolic and incendiary, had elected to direct their grievances toward the city's cultural institutions. This determined body advanced upon the premises, bearing placards, the shattered remains of a film apparatus, and torches aflame. A theatre clerk, embodying the civility of the establishment, endeavoured to dissuade them with polite remonstrance. Alas, his efforts were met not with reason, but with ruthless defiance. What followed was an eruption of chaos so sudden and so devastating as to defy comprehension. As the orchestra within the theatre commenced its accompaniment and a little boy started dancing up a storm to the delight of the audience, the moving picture flickered to life. Mere minutes later, flames were ignited, and with alarming rapidity the great theatre, so recently a bastion of elegance, was consumed by an inferno of extraordinary ferocity. Within, confusion gave way to sheer panic as guests, moments earlier enraptured by spectacle, fled in desperate haste. Smoke coiled through the grand interior, the magnificent chandelier trembled in the heat before succumbing to the blaze falling on top of an escaping crowd, and the once harmonious strains of the orchestra were silenced by the roar of fire.
Did the orchestra continue playing music as the theatre was engulfed by the flames?
I don't doubt that they were playing music. Other people heard it. But when people say that music played as
Theatre
went down, that is a ghastly, horrible lie.
By some providential mercy, Miss Pickford and Miss Gish escaped the catastrophe with their lives, though not without loss, for Miss Pickford's treasured furs were claimed by the flames. Mr. Lloyd, too, emerged from the devastation, spared from the grim fate that befell so many others. The fire brigades, all of the king's horses and all of the king's men, arrived with commendable urgency, yet the inferno proved so relentless in its fury that their efforts were rendered tragically insufficient, the blaze illuminating the night sky to such an extent that it was reportedly visible as far afield as Whitechapel. By the following morning, the Piccadilly Oriental Pavilion Theatre stood no longer as a monument to refinement, but as a smouldering ruin, reduced entirely to rubble. Of the approximately 800 individuals present, guests and protesters alike, 67 souls were lost to the flames, their fate sealing the night in solemn infamy. In the aftermath, a heavy silence prevailed. Mary Pickford, Lillian Gish, and Harold Lloyd departed England and returned to America with quiet haste, and, in the years that followed, never did they speak publicly of that most dreadful evening.
Now, Miss Gish, historians have long whispered of a most dreadful evening in London, an incident at the Piccadilly Oriental Pavilion Theatre. It has been suggested that you yourself were present.
Thus concluded an occasion that had commenced in splendour beyond compare, only to descend into calamity of the gravest order, its memory lingering faintly, like embers in the ashes of a forgotten age.